We'll get started in just another minute, just letting people get into the webinar. Okay, great. Well, welcome to today's panel on racism and mass incarceration, sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Laughing Gull Foundation, and the UCF Art Gallery, and hosted in association with the exhibition, Illuminating the Darkness, Our Carceral Landscape. I'm Carrie Watson, the director of the Florida Prison Education Project, which is an initiative of the University of Central Florida that brings higher education opportunities to people incarcerated in this state, and also seeks to raise awareness about higher education in prison and mass incarceration. It's my privilege today to moderate our discussion. The format will be as follows. Our guest speakers will introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their work and their projects, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Please type your questions and to whom they are addressed into our Q&A feature here in the webinar. You can also upvote questions that you'd like to see answered, and as they're answered, I'll mark them as such so that you'll be able to see that it has been addressed. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Reuben Saldano.
Greetings, everybody. As Professor Watson said, my name is Reuben Saldano. Most people these days know me as Coach Reuben. Florida incarcerates more juveniles than anybody else in the United States into the adult prison system. So I'm one of those statistics. I entered the Florida Department of Corrections at the age of 16, starting in 1992, which eventually accumulated, it was for a grand theft auto and a robbery, which eventually accumulated into 19 years. Okay, so I'm 44 now, haven't been arrested probably over 20 years, 2 decades. But anywho, it cost me the majority of my life until very recently. So, you know, my thing is, was I not afforded, you know, the same opportunity as other children? Why wasn't myself and many others afforded the same opportunity as others when it comes to juvenile diversion, when it comes to incarceration, right? Because I wasn't. So I don't know if I could have been rehabilitated at a young age as a gang leader from Miami. And so I was once the leader of Miami's biggest street gang, which I ended up bringing to Orlando, Florida, which I live at now. And like I said, this was all at the teenage stage, but you know, I don't even know if I could have been rehabilitated, to be honest, because you can't I wasn't habilitated, and most of us aren't. You know, to rehabilitate, you got to go back to what you were. And many of us in these high crime areas aren't habilitated from the beginning to become rehabilitated. So fast forward now, I eventually ended up starting the only youth crime prevention program in the world that trains kids in high crime areas for free in mixed martial arts outside, and we compete at the highest levels. For example, last year, we went to Rome, Italy, the first youth mixed martial art competition in world history in the Olympic Center, and in conjunction with several other gyms throughout the United States. We are the #1 team in the world, almost 300 participants, battling against, I think, 26 other countries. So a lot of people don't even know that, like, this is happening right in the backyard. And literally, I train kids in parking lots and in my backyard. So I believe in prevention before detention. I believe in utilizing credible messenger mentors, those who have the credibility to bring the message of youth crime prevention. You don't necessarily have to have been incarcerated, but if you're sitting behind a desk all day long, you're not going to be able to reach the type of kids that I'm constantly around. One of our mottos, I have it behind me, is gloves up, guns down. I mean, I could just go on and on and on about this, but for those who feel like those who were formerly incarcerated can't demonstrate a change in their life, or that they can't be true, authentic mentors, you're wrong. And I'm here to prove to you that you're wrong. And I can introduce you to hundreds of others throughout the world who can prove to you that you're wrong. that you know, the poison can't become the cure. Some of the world's strongest medicines come from poison. Don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. And I'm gonna pass it on to my brother Marquise.
Thank you for that, Reuben. I always get the chills when I hear the story, and I always appreciate all the things that you're doing in the community, especially with the youth. Greetings, everyone. My name is Marquise Mckenzie. I'm the chapter and statewide leadership coordinator for Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. I'm also the owner of the Dirt Master LLC Residential Construction Cleaning Company, and also the president of Community Outreach Enterprise, a nonprofit teacher entrepreneurship to at-risk youth who are incarcerated into the jails. I have to feedback and piggyback off what a lot of things that Reuben said. At the age of 15, on my very first offense, I was tucked out of the juvenile system and charged as an adult for armed robbery. Now, I want to be very clear that I'm a firm believer of if you do the crime, you definitely should do the time. But I definitely think that the state of Florida doesn't treat kids as kids, and they charge us as an adults. So when I hear about mass incarceration and I hear about racism, I think about how the system is racist and mass incarcerate a lot of youth. And particularly, you know, I shared my story with a lot of different lawmakers, all Southern Poverty Law, No Place for a Child campaign. And one of the things that stuck out to me was very important is learning that a child brain is not developed until they're at the age of 25. And you look at the different stipulations in the state of Florida, you can't buy tobacco, you can't buy alcohol until you're a certain age. And if that stuff is a requirement, why are we treating kids as an adults at a certain age, knowing that mentally their brain is not all the way to the capacity? So I'm intrigued by this conversation. I love talking about this conversation because I still have friends when I was 15 that was charged as an adult that are still serving 30 and 40, even 75-year life sentence. And I honestly don't think it takes that much time to rehabilitate somebody. Our system just needs to do better. And again, I'll just look forward to having this conversation. And I appreciate you guys for using your platform and speaking out because it's definitely needed in the state of Florida, but also from what I've seen is that the world follows the state of Florida. So if we can get it together here in Florida, I think we can impact many other lives across the states. And with that being said, I would love to pass it to Daniel Clifford.
I'll unmute myself. Thanks, Marquise. All right, so yeah, like you said, I'm Danny Clifford. I'm here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, working with a group called Just Education at the University of Minnesota, and we're essentially starting the first college in prison program here in the state, like official college in prison program, prison higher education program. And I'm all about education. I think like probably it starts, you know, obviously it starts at the elementary level, and you know, for the level of prosperity enjoyed by so many in this country, we should not have a public school system that's as broken as it is. So the school to prison pipeline thing seems totally unnecessary. But education at the level of higher education, once individuals are incarcerated, is pretty much like a silver bullet. It's been there's these programs, Carrie could tell you because she runs one of them, but there's college and prison programs cropping up all over the US, and it's lowering recidivism rates pretty much across the board for institutions and individuals. Yeah, so I'm an artist too. I'm a visual artist, and I don't know how I got hooked up with this show, but it's a great group of artists. I'm really excited to be here, you know, on this Zoom call. But the Just Education Initiative is really sort of my baby right now, and I could go on about that, but I think y'all get the idea. And so I'm gonna pass it on to Gail Buswell. Gail. Okay, so I'll keep talking.
Gail, unmute.
Oh, is Gail just muted?
I apologize. I definitely apologize. My name's Gail Buswell, and I am the Central Florida organizer for Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. On Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, I represent Orange, Osceola, Polk, Seminole, Brevard, Volusia, and Marion counties. I'm a returning citizen, and I lost my mother when I was in prison. I lost my only son. I lost a brother in jail. And so I know what it feels like to lose a loved one. And I was able to go to the funeral. But now, when a person is in prison or in the system, they're unable to go and even show their last respect for their family members, and so that is very deep and sad. Also, I'm a volunteer with Seminole County Jail through the Renew program. We mentor women and ladies in, with past drug and different problems. Also, I am a member of FCB, that's Black Women Roundtable, and I will just pass it to Jason.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, everybody else, for being here today. My name is Jason Franzik. I'm currently the program coordinator for Florida Prison Education Project. I'm also an independent photographer and artist here locally in Orlando, Florida. For me, it's been a long journey to get where I am today. I did spend some time in prison a little over 10 years ago, and that kind of inspired in me a goal to become an educator, because while I was in, I volunteered as a GED program assistant, and I would see the faces on the other students that we were instructing as they would pass their GED classes. And that proved to me twofold, that I'm capable and that anybody inside is capable and willing to do to better themselves. We don't need to continually punish people. As I got out, I noticed there was a lot of hurdles that I had to fight, finding housing, finding employment, fighting for my education. And these are unnecessary steps that we have to go through once we're released. And today, that's what I'm advocating for. So for me, working for Florida Prison Education Project and the other programs that I associate with, it's more about not only public awareness, but it's also bringing it back inside and showing people inside that, yes, if you fight hard enough, if you just keep going forward with a positive attitude, you can become something other than what you've been stigmatized as. So going in and being able to show by example and teach inside an art class. Art is essentially learning how to see differently, learning how to change your perspectives and view something from outside, which really helped me see a lot. I'm just really glad to be here. And thank you. From that, I will turn it over to Hafiz Quintero.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, everybody. It's an honor for me to be here with you. My name is Hafiz Quintero. I'm an artist from Panama and living in Europe, in Switzerland now. When I was 19, I ended up in jail with a big sentence of 20 years, which is 10 years and 8 months because of bank robbery. And I was so lucky because I met a woman, an old artist woman who came in prison just to teach art as a way of substitution. And I say substitution because she used to say, and I also confirm that, you know, art and crime are like twin brothers because they share in the need of transgression. And I approached art and I started to feel the satisfaction that I was feeling when I was back then in the street doing this thing. And well, I'm also lucky because when I came out, despite the fact that the normal jobs, social things, was our institution, the one who opened the doors and allowed me to explore this. And well, I speak through my work about these experiences to show that it's possible to use art as a way of change. I believe that someone of the people before they say, yes, we feel the same. Yes, I believe we feel the same when we approach the world with the new tools, different tools. So art allowed me to be the same man I was before, but without harming anybody else. You know, in any case, myself anyway, because art is this way. And well, I I was part of a group of 11 inmates who were having these art lessons. None of us return anymore. I believe we also learn how to organize the ideas and also to prevent to go inside of this institutionalization, which is normally people are not able to identify themselves, but in the context of prisons in Latin America, at least, and you know, people are starting to return for one another reason, but mostly because of this institutionalization, which is inside the skin. And art allows me to see myself with distance, and therefore, I I don't know. It's like working on under the how you say lupa, this big glass, so I can see myself, and because I work as my art is my work is self-reference art. So I can see I always searching and watching and bringing this experience to other people to show what it is, how important can be the creativity as a tool to overcome ourselves. One of the things that I believe in the inside the prison there is a lot of talent. Creativity is matter of life or death in there, and if we put this creativity into the art world, we can save a lot and also allow ourselves to be who we really are, who we are. So I pass it to Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, thank you for that. My name is Christopher Tian. I'm over here representing actually the first people I want to represent is the Mountain View program, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the opportunity to actually be here with you today. So the Mountain View program is an organization that focuses on expanding opportunities for post-secondary education for people who are incarcerated. And so I was given an opportunity to attend college by a saint that we call Donald Roden. And through him, I was able to like truly learn about my history. I was able to truly come into my talents and just have the opportunity currently to work with people who are incarcerated and who are coming out of incarceration with serious mental illness issues. And so today, what I wanted to do is focus a little bit on that. We have we have an issue in our prison system currently that I want to address. So I wrote a quick blurb. So if you don't mind, just stand with me. So when we look at the names Elijah McCain, Deborah Danner, Daniel Prude, Keith Vidal, and Natasha McKenna, we now know that all of these people lost their lives because of the violent actions and negligence of law enforcement officers, and every single one of them suffered from mental illness issues. You see, we have traded mental health institutions for prison cells, and we have traded caseworkers for police officers. Now, 1 out of every 5 prison or jail beds are occupied by individuals with mental disabilities. How did this occur? Unfortunately, we're paying for the incompetence of policymakers, psychiatrists, and elevated officials from the 70s who are seeking a conservative method of solving the overcrowding of mental health facilities. Currently, our federal government has handed these responsibilities over to states and local communities to take care of the seriously mentally ill population. Hospitalizing people with mental health issues for long-term stays has been considered an infringement on their rights, Similar to so many of our institutions, we have watched public ones now become severely underfunded as private ones become a luxury to a select few that are able to afford it. The seriously mentally ill population will spill out into a culture of homelessness and occupy cell blocks where they will be criminalized for circumstances out of their control. According to the NRI, by 2014, these treatment centers have declined by 77%. And now 20% of our jails and 15% of our prison population suffer from serious mental issues. We have found a way to further segregate our society. We have given our police force the right to murder and incarcerate people that do not fit their standard of normal. Unfortunately, if you are a poor person or a person of color, you have a higher chance of being a victim in this scenario. Not simply because you lack the resources to be properly diagnosed and treated, but because poverty and race itself is a trauma-inducing event that may have dire consequences on your mental state. After all, how could someone sleep soundly knowing that Breonna Taylor's dreams were snatched from her because she chose to sleep too comfortably? How could one find solace in religion when Dylan Roof could receive a burger after committing mass murder, but Tamir Rice can't play in a park in peace? These stories have become common occurrences. We watch idly as democracy has been replaced by a dystopian police state. We chose to value profit over lives and property over progress. Since the decrease in mental institutions during the 70s, we watch our prison population increase from 200,000 to 2.5 million. We've allocated over $100 billion a year on policing, but spend less than a third of that on health insurance, housing assistance, SNAP benefits, and child care tax collectively. So when we say defund the police, we are stating that funds should be repurposed into social programs. Caseworkers should assist cops as first responders. Having a substance abuse problem and other mental health issues should not result in incarceration or a death sentence. A discussion about police reform is overdue, and our silence has resulted in the loss of too many lives. It's time that we come together collectively and push for institutional change. And so that's why I'm grateful for programs like this, because it gives us the opportunity to share our stories, to share the necessity of second chances, and also push for the much needed change that we need in today's society. So with that said, I'd like to pass the mic over to Terrell Blanc.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrell Blunt. I am the director of the formerly incarcerated College Graduates Network. We're a nonprofit that works to promote the education and empowerment of formerly incarcerated people through a collective community. I think on the topic of racism and mass incarceration, there are so many things that we could talk about, and Chris highlighted so many of them in his piece. And I think, I'll probably expand on a couple of those as well as maybe introduce some perspectives of my own, right? I think first and foremost, two of the most common false perceptions in this country is that, one, the police are here to serve and protect us, especially those in Black bodies, and two, that prisons were created in order to place people who society needs to be protected from. So one is the place where people wind up, and two is the people that initially started the pathway for them to be there, the police and the prisons, tied very closely together. And where racism comes into play, right, is if you're familiar with the 13th Amendment, it allegedly abolished slavery, except for when a person is convicted of a crime. That is the only time in this country that slavery, or what they refer to as involuntary servitude, that's the only time it's acceptable, when a person is convicted of a crime. So if I'm not mistaken, right now, everyone outside of Mitch Watson on this call that is spoken, we are former slaves, because we convicted a crime and therefore, or we were convicted of a crime, not convicted of a crime, because that's a whole nother story. If you want to talk about how many people are in prison for crimes they did not commit, or just serving, insane amounts of time for petty crimes, right? But this system in which people are fed, majority from Black communities and poor communities, and placed into this system, which is prison, serving, again, anywhere from 2 years to life in prison, right? But people get released and they come home to more barriers that are in place, because the system itself was designed to do just that. A lot of people say, this is probably the third false perception, is that we need to fix a broken system. We don't need to fix a broken system. We need to demolish the system and rebuild something better. It's not fixing, we don't have to fix something that's not broken. It isn't broken because it was designed to do this. It was designed to bring harm to Black communities. And it just so happened that, white men and women get swept under that rug because of, again, the policies that are created. But it was designed for people that look like me, but it doesn't, discriminate against anyone else. And when you have barriers such as employment, such as housing, if you have to stay clean, if you have child support, if you have fines and fees from being incarcerated, and you can't vote, you can't exercise your right to vote for the person you want to see in office because you hear them speaking to you when they, have interviews, or if you just want to completely stop somebody else from getting in a position. You can't even have a right to vote in Florida if you have not paid your fines and fees. And in some places, it's not even about fines and fees. If you're on parole, you're excluded from voting. If you've been incarcerated, period, parole or not, you're excluded from voting. And it's things like that, devices like that, that again, were used, if you know about the poll tax, if you know about Black codes, so on and so forth, from the Jim Crow era, that some may argue really does still exist, just disguised differently. These were things that were designed for us, Black people, to be blocked out of, so that we had no rights as citizens. And we're not too far removed from the Jim Crow era. It was literally like 55, 56 years ago that we had segregated schools that, or purposely designed segregated schools, that if I sat at a diner bar, if I was alive back then, 56 years ago, which my great aunts could probably talk about, they would have got milkshakes poured on them for sitting in an all-white diner. They would have got beat up for that, for using a water fountain. Like, this stuff isn't we talk about it as if it was hundreds of years ago, and it wasn't. Slavery was hundreds of years ago, but the nastiness that this country continues to manifest, and the blatant racism in this country that just continues to blossom like weeds in the garden, it's nasty. And we're living in it right now, as you see in Wisconsin, in California, in pick your state, pick your city. It's alive and well. It's just that now it's being exposed to a far greater number of people in different countries and different continents, and even different tax brackets now, because you have the celebrities who finally get a chance to sit down during COVID, and they can't escape what's happening to George Floyd. They can't escape what's happening to Breonna Taylor. They can't escape this stuff. And now it's really clicking with people like, holy crap, it is something that we need to change here. It is. And when I watch a video of an Oklahoma man who was being attempted to be dragged out of his car seat, out of his car, and the driver's seat, that is. And he's wrestling with the cops, and they did everything in their power not to hurt this man. They pleaded with him. They called his name. You know, they threatened him, saying, "We're going to tase you. We're going to tase you again," warning him time after time, pleading with this man to just get out the car and let us arrest you. And he defied them so much. And when they finally got him out the car, he turned around and shot both of them, killing one of them. And I couldn't help but think that, man, it must be good to be a white man in this country. Because even if you are at the very bottom in regard to how much you earn, your societal status, you still have more privilege than me. You still have more privilege than me at the end of the day, because if I did the same thing that that man did, I would not be here right now. I'd have a hashtag next to my name. I would even push that if I complied with the officers and said one word wrong to them, or even looked at them funny, that I would have still become a hashtag. And it's that racism that is deeply rooted, again, not just in the system of policing, but in our prison system. And the way we need to get around that is so many directions we can go in, right? But I really think it takes looking at, if we're going to lean on those who are in positions of power, i.e. like the democracy that we have, right? It's a lot of political barriers that are in place that we need to really work to take down. And I think one of them at the top of the list is really talking about the involuntary servitude when you're convicted of a crime, because that is the sole reason why states like Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Texas can work people without paying them. Here in the state of New Jersey, people do work, right? People in prison, they do work, but they get paid. They may get paid $1, a day, $3 a day if you got a really good job, but you get paid. You got some states that pay people by the hour, but those states that's along like the antebellum South, Louisiana, they don't pay anybody at all. And if you think about it, it just shows how committed to the Confederacy they were and how much they wanted slavery in place, because they profited so much off of that. And it has not changed post-Civil War. They still are profiting off of labor in so many different ways. And there's also private companies that have profited from prison labor as well, whether it's AT&T, Walmart, Victoria's Secret, McDonald's, they all profit off of prison labor. And until majority of the people in this country can really take a look at that and think about, like, damn, if you ask if anybody's watching this right now, you ask a family member, hey mom, did you know that slavery was legal in this country? And I'm pretty sure that person will laugh at you or scoff or whatever, but you tell them, no, it is. If you're convicted of a crime, you're a slave. And until we can sit down and really talk about, like, damn, what do we say about this country of ours that we hold to the highest standard, and we're the #1 country in the world, but we still enslave people. Until we can sit down and get rid of that, that's humanize those people that are in prison now. And we can move on from there. But it's so many different things. I really appreciate you, Kerry, for putting on this event and hearing from amazing people who have survived a very hellish experience. No matter how much time you serve, being incarcerated is truly what Mr. Du Bois called a peculiar institution. It is very, very dark, and to make it out of there, I believe is not only an accomplishment, but a testimony to our resilience as directly impacted people that should not have found their way in the prison system. So again, I appreciate everything that everyone shared. You all are doing amazing work, especially down there in Florida. trying to restore folks' rights. It's needed, and it's needed in every state. And I encourage folks on the call listening today to just find a way to get involved, some way, shape, or form, because this stuff is flying over people's heads, and it's a shame.
Thank you so much for that, Terrell, and thank you to everybody who's here today sharing their stories and having been directly impacted by what, as you said, is not a broken system, but is a system that's working exactly the way it was designed to work, and is one that we should all be ashamed of and working hard to change, and so, or to abolish. I'll go out there and say abolish. And so thank you all again for this. We do have some questions that have come up in the Q&A. And so I'm going to start with one of the first ones I saw. I think it's directed, well, to a lot of you. It was typed while Reuben was speaking, so I don't know if he wants to maybe tackle it first. But the question is, what factors helped you in becoming a leader in your community?
Everybody has their own experiences in life, correct, right? So I'm a believer, and people might not like this, and this isn't to toot my own horn, because you might be great, like the artists in here, I admire them. It's kind of like godly work. It's like, how in the heck did you put that on that? You know, how did your brain want to put this on paper or on a skull? It's just amazing to me, right? So like I said, it's not to toot my own horn, but I don't believe everybody on the planet is born to be a community leader. I mean, it's just proven statistically. Look at your businesses, look at your governments. I mean, there's people on top and there's people on bottom. That does not mean that leaders should lead in arrogance, that they should look down on people, that, you know, they should keep people behind them instead of in front of them or side by side with them. So I don't want to be misconstrued on what I'm saying, but I think, I don't think you can kind of be taught to be a leader. I think you can improve in your leadership skills, just like in the mixed martial arts, what I teach. I don't believe in mixed martial art masters. I believe nobody has it all. You know, you'll always learn to the day you die. And a mixed martial art master that thinks he knows it all, there's going to be somebody in the world who will prove him wrong, in the ring, cage, street, wherever. That's my answer. I know it's not one that's kind of satisfying, but you got to grow and develop with it.
No, thank you so much for that. I think that that really resonates with me, this notion that we're always learning, we're always trying to improve. I was really struck by Hafiz and Jason both talking about art being transformative. And so I think for some people it's art, for some people it's martial arts, for some people it's activism and advocacy, and finding that thing that you're passionate about, right? That where you can channel your energy, that you know, makes you feel good and is beneficial to others. I had another question over here. A group that has been trying to work in Longwood to have an independent police citizens review board, but are facing some challenges. And so the question is, I think for any of you, but maybe for Gail and Marquise, this might be the most appropriate. The question is, what are your recommendations for working to implement reform in communities, especially conservative communities in Central Florida, when you're met with leadership that is afraid to change?
With me, hello, this is Gail. To me, this year 2020 election is very, very important, and with our local races in Florida, it's a chance to reform justice. And because we have been state attorneys and judges and races this time, and sheriff races. And so that the judges and the sheriff and the state attorneys, that's our justice reform system right there. And so a lot of it is who we put into office and who we bring out of office. And so that's what I have to say. I'll pass it on to Mr. Marquise.
Thank you. Also, great question. One of the biggest aspects I would think when it comes down to reforming in certain small counties and small cities, even in big towns and cities, right? I'm a firm believer is building relationships. And sometimes, when it comes down to advocating and reforming, sometimes others look at us as that we're coming as attackers. So I think one of the things is that we have to make sure that we're coming as calm, even though the situation is much bigger and sometimes we're burning inside. But I found myself being allowed at a lot more tables the individuals who are protesters, because when they look at you that you're coming to try to find a solution and you're not trying to protest and disrupt things, it's easier for you to sit at a table. So my suggestion is find common ground, and even if it's just one particular person that leadership may want to speak to. One of the things I found here in Central Florida and Orlando, our politicians, they answer to clergy before they answer to community leaders. And sometimes we have to play the game that they want to play. And if they only want to answer the clergy, we'll allow our clergy to go in the room and represent the community, but we make sure that they're doing it the right way. So finding that common ground that leadership or politicians answer to, and making a connection there. And from that connection, being able to build. And once they see that you're a part of that group, or you're a part of clergy, or clergy works with you, or either however the group is, they're allowed to see that, okay, this person is not attacking us. This person just want to fix the system. We have to be able to show that passion and that fire versus coming to fight. And that allow us to do a lot of things in the room. For instance, we talk about the Citizen Review Board, looking up the laws, looking up the research, looking up the handbooks. And sometimes it's just simple us filing to be able to sit on those committees. A lot of very committees have vacant seats, and we may say we want to sit on it, but do we actually go fill out the paperwork and meet the requirements of searching or vetting the people that can do that? So that's one of the things. Look and see if there's any vacant seats open, and just start to make your way and start having conversations, and just finding that common ground is something that I think has got us very far here in Orlando. And for example, when you talk about housing, we know that in the state of Florida, if you have a felony conviction, you can't rent, and that's a big issue. So I took it a step further to try to push buttons. I showed up to various board of county commission meetings, wasn't getting me anywhere, until I decided to say, hey, I want to sit on the affordable housing advisory board. So looking for those different vacant seats and finding that common ground, it helps beats a lot of things, what I would say.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think political activism, being active in your community. I was thinking a little bit too, though, about, here in Florida, the voters passed overwhelmingly Amendment 4 to restore voting rights. And the legislature and the courts have continuously found ways to undermine that amendment. And I know that there's been a big push and a lot of people, LeBron James and others donating money to pay the fines in order to, kind of have a subversive action to fight what the courts have been doing. What do you see next, and what can people on the call do to help FRRC and help to see that Amendment 4 is actually put into place, so that as Gail mentioned, voting is so important, but there are so many people that are not allowed to vote right now, for I'd say illegally. What can we do?
Right. So to me, everybody that's a part of the organization, when it's obstacles, we find ways to overcome those obstacles. And when you think about Amendment 4, it restored voting rights to 1.4 million Floridians throughout the state of Florida, right? And when you think about how we got that passed, we got that passed through love. We got support through all walks of life, all parties, whether you're Republican, Democrat, it was supported by everyone. So for that showed us that Florida does want change, right? And we just have to strategically find that. One of the ways that I think is big is we focus on relationship building. We realize that people go out and do things for those who they have relationships. So we're encouraging everybody across the state to have conversations with their families, have conversations with their friends, because we know one thing from past elections, for any president to win, the president to see they had to win the state of Florida. And we know from also looking at data that the state of Florida, these last presidential races only won by 100,000 votes. So out of the 1.4 million Floridians that Amendment 4 helped, it's 875,000 individuals across the state that do not owe fines and fees. So we have it right there in our hands already, despite the barriers that legislators are putting in front of us. We still have a lot of people. So versus trying to go back and fight with the governor and put out statements, we're looking positive, and we're trying to reach the people that we know that can vote despite and don't have any fines and fees. And we're having conversations with them. And the biggest things that we're doing now is educating. Education is one of the biggest things. And we also, one of the things that we help is very helpful is getting people a part of democracy. So we're very big on making sure that people work in the polls or being poll watchers, because when you give somebody an opportunity to be a part of democracy, it shows there's a higher chance that more people are going out and vote. So we're just pushing people to get engaged as much as possible, having conversations. If they can't vote, I'm pretty sure you have 5 or 10 family members that can vote for you. We don't want nobody vote not to be counted. So again, feel free to reach out to the organization. I see Jason put our website. We're partnering and having conversations, and also being that we're in a pandemic and we're trying to find financial opportunities that people can help and get paid as well by doing something. So if you can't vote, let us try to help you get a job where you can phone bank, you can text, and you can still contribute and make sure that your voice is heard.
Thanks so much. We have another question. I don't know, I have not seen the movie that is referenced in the question, but it says a lot of the panelists have discussed juveniles. So I ask, have any of you seen Lost for Life? If yes, what would be your reaction to someone using the story of Tori as proof that some juveniles cannot be rehabilitated? I don't know if anyone's seen the movie. Yep, I have not seen it. My personal belief would be that I do believe that, you know, the problem has to do with, as was mentioned, usually diversion, right? And different types of programs being offered to different communities. So that would be all I would be able to say to that one. Anybody else?
Here.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the film, and juvenile justice is not my area of expertise in regard to, like, you know, the justice system. But I will say that I don't believe in juvenile life. I don't believe we should be arresting children at all. And if anything under like 21, 22, like 25, these are kids. You could call them young adults, but they're kids. And we shouldn't be locking people up, you know, period, but especially youth. That is just insane. And to what someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Reuben, about rehabilitation. I think it's the same. It's exactly what he spoke to. There is no rehabilitation for children and young adults. It shouldn't be any rehabilitation. It's literally like we discard those who we deem as problems and problems we don't care to fix. And it's much easier for them to throw us away rather than really dig deep and try to find out what type of childhood traumas do we have? What are we experiencing right now as kids in the household? What are we missing? You know, whether it's mentorship or, you know, not everyone has the best parents. Like it's so many different things that we could look at and address first before, you know, writing young people off to spend their young adulthood and sometimes further than that, you know, in prison.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think a lot of the issue has to do with trauma and mental health and not having the services in the right place, right? Criminalizing behavior that is actually a mental health issue, a cognitive issue, a situational issue, right? People are not living in a good environment. They're not offered the resources. So yeah, I think that even people, you know, in legal studies, criminal justice, would agree that a lot of the things that we are we're misplacing services, right? We're using the wrong types of expertise to address trauma and abuse and mental health issues, which I really appreciated what Chris was talking about, right? About the deinstitutionalization of the United States also coinciding with mass incarceration and a number of other things, right, as well, the civil rights movement, and also the lessening of social services. And states that have the least amount of social services have the highest incarceration rates. I don't think that that inverse relationship is a coincidence. So yeah, we're not addressing mental health, and we do. Some studies are showing that some 40% of people incarcerated have some sort of mental health or cognitive disability, and that one study showed that 99% of women who are incarcerated have suffered trauma and often sexual abuse. So that's a huge statistic, I think. Well, we're coming up with just a few more minutes in our hour. I have another question here from one of our attendees. Given that the pay for incarcerated people in Florida is between 20 cents to 55 cents an hour, has there been an effort to calculate this and include it as part of the fees that are owed in order to be able to vote? I don't know if anyone knows anything about that, but that was an interesting point, I thought.
Very interesting. You can go ahead. I'll give you a chance.
Yeah, I don't know firsthand about Florida. I know in my state that there's fees that the jails or that the prisons are charging employees, inmate employees. They're called cost of confinement fees. You're basically paying rent for your prison bed, or your restitution that you owe from whatever your case was. They'll garnish your wages for that too. So I think in a way they're already sort of putting that money toward. Well, they're putting it towards themselves, but they're putting it towards these fines that they've imposed on people. But that's Minnesota, so I don't know about Florida.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that I think is a serious issue as well, right? This notion of people paying for their incarceration, especially when we have just with this past weekend, a man incarcerated for some 45 years, right, for a crime that now it's been proven he didn't commit. And we offer very little in restitution for the number of people who are wrongly convicted because of the color of their skin and spending their lives in prison.
I think also my personal experience when I was incarcerated, I was on the Florida Department of Transportation gang, where we went out and cleaned up the roadsides. They don't pay us, or they did not at the time pay us to do this work, but the state does have a contract with the Department of Transportation, and they are making money because they sell our services. So the state makes their money in spades, sometimes in excess of $25 an hour per person who is out there. So none of that gets kicked back to anything except to line the Department of Corrections pockets.
And I would just like to add that like, because we live in a capitalist society, we've been able to find methods to capitalize off of every aspect, off of every industry that oppresses people who, like, basically people who are in the lower rung of society, so when you sit down and you look at the prison system, the U.S. prison system, Angela Davis was speaking about this actually, and why prisons are obsolete in her book. She said the U.S. prison system was such a successful model that people from other countries came to actually sit down and take notes on how profitable, our prison system, was pertaining to our economy. So currently, it costs more money to actually send work overseas than it does to have prisoners do it for you. Because overseas, you may be paying somebody $5 an hour, but like the prisoners with the highest wages make around $3 a day. And so this has become a part of major industries. A lot of the academic institutions that we may be affiliated with. A lot of the transportation institutions, mass production institutions, all of these usually have ties to the prison industrial complex because of just how cheap the labor in prisons are. So I would say that it comes a time where we have to start addressing these things. And when we're talking about dismantling specific aspects of these prisons, is when you think about it, a lot of these jobs that they have inmates doing for wages that are below minimum wage or for no wage at all, if they would have gave them jobs to regular working Americans for just a living wage, these prisons wouldn't be as packed as they are currently. But they found a way, to they found a way around that. They are comfortable bringing about slavery, like Terrell Blount has said. We are comfortable with this concept of free labor. And so I definitely think that there's room to actually bring about some of this work that we're doing into the community to actually give people wages. But I don't think that we're going to see a change in that anytime soon because it's too profitable right now.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think the relationship between capitalism and the prison industrial complex. One of the attendees added in the comments that, yeah, if we think about also adding that the fees for phone calls, video visitation, tablets, I mean, it is, there's a market, it's an industry, right? Prisons are a business and a big business. And that probably isn't talked about enough for people who are not that aware with what's going on with the criminal justice system. So you're right, I think it raises some much larger questions, right, about the system and who benefits from the system and who does not benefit, who's a victim of the system and oppressed by the system. Well, we are at our hour. Oh, yes, yeah, Danny.
Oh, real quick, I know we're at our hour, but yeah, it's a big industry that targets with predatory practices a very specific set of our society, a set of people and mothers and children, especially, who are paying the price for this too. And think about that, it's just that's how people remain poor, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you so much. So true. Thank you to all of you today for spending this time with us. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you.